Sean Combs and crypto mogul Sam Bankman-Fried are currently being held at MDC in Sunset Park, but it's where other high-profile inmates like R. Kelly, Michael Cohen, Fetty Wap, and farmer bro Martin Shkreli were lodged at one point in time.
There is constant violence. I have with me right now memo after memo after memo as to lockdowns. I can't tell you how many times I go to visit a client and I'm turned away because there's either an emergency count or there's an emergency lockdown.
It seems like the feds were tired of playing it cool with the infamous Brooklyn jail, and they decided to kick things up a notch. The target this time? The MDC Brooklyn, the same cozy place where Sean Diddy Combs is enjoying some quality time, thanks to those horrifying charges. And as if the scandal wasn't enough, Monday's interagency operation turned this federal lockup into the setting of a crime thriller. They even brought in a K-9 unit. Gotta make sure nothing suspicious slipped through. What did those dogs really find? And why is everyone so furious about it? Now let's be real. This wasn't your everyday check-in with the inmates. The FBI, DA, NYPD, basically everyone but the Avengers all showed up with a purpose. The official word, no active threat. But come on. Do you really deploy a full-scale federal task force complete with substance-sniffing dogs, if things are all hunky-dory? The Bureau of Prisons tried to play it cool by mentioning how the whole thing was pre-planned. Sure, nothing like a surprise full-scale inspection to remind everyone who's boss. If you're wondering if Diddy had anything to do with the sudden flex by law enforcement, the official story seems to be, well, not exactly. But come on, this isn't some coincidence. Combs is the latest addition to MDC Brooklyn's ever-glamorous lineup, joining the likes of R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Sam Bankman-Fried. Looks like this federal jail's been moonlighting as a hangout for A-list disgraced celebrities. Forget red carpets, we're talking steel bars and concrete walls now. Adding more intrigue, the facility itself has been under fire lately. Not for hosting stars, but for treating everyone there like they're expendable. The conditions are reportedly so horrendous that some judges have straight up refused to send people there. We're talking rats in the cells, a staff shortage you wouldn't believe, and overall vibes reminiscent of a medieval dungeon. So it's pretty rich to see the Bureau of Prisons suddenly concerned about maintaining a safe environment. Combs' legal team, featuring big names like Mark Agnifilo and Tini Geragos, has been busy trying to get him transferred out of Brooklyn. Apparently they think New Jersey has a better class of jail cells. But for now, Diddy remains stuck in MDC Brooklyn under what's been labeled a routine self-harm watch. Routine or not, it's hard not to think of Jeffrey Epstein, whose stint in federal custody didn't exactly end well. Not that anyone here needs a reminder of that scandal. Speaking of Epstein, the Manhattan Federal Jail where he was kept, you know, the one that had the cameras magically malfunction and the guards conveniently fall asleep the night he died? Yeah, that one's temporarily out of business. Guess they figured one bad headline is enough. So now it's MDC Brooklyn's turn under the magnifying glass. And with Diddy in there, the story writes itself. But back to the interagency operation. Sources from the defense attorney side of things are calling it a full-on sweep, with agents going cell to cell like they were looking for hidden treasure. The official explanation still claims it was all just routine, but let's be real, this was a show of force. Maybe they were looking for substance, maybe for weapons, or maybe just to remind Diddy and everyone else there that no matter how famous you are, you're just another inmate in their eyes. It's funny how the Bureau likes to use vague terms like achieving our shared goal of maintaining a safe environment. Translation: we're going to rummage through everything, make a big scene, and hopefully find something to make us look good. Given the conditions of this jail, they'd probably need more than an interagency operation to turn it into anything remotely safe. But hey, at least they're trying, right? Meanwhile, Combs continues to plead not guilty, and the accusers just keep coming in hot with civil lawsuits. It's like a never-ending spiral. The headlines just won't stop and the plot gets thicker by the day. Diddy's got his trial date set for next May, but until then he gets to share his accommodations with the ghosts of other fallen from grace celebs. The difference is the spotlight isn't at an awards show, it's glaring down on the bleak halls of MDC Brooklyn. The whole situation with MDC Brooklyn reads like the ultimate reality show, except no one's really winning anything. Between overcrowding, subpar facilities, and now federal raids, it's a madhouse. It's no secret that the Bureau of Prisons has had its fair share of scandals, but this latest chapter just adds fuel to the fire. Just last month, there were reports that inmates had to deal with days of lockdowns, no electricity, and a food situation that can only be described as borderline inhumane. It's enough to make one wonder how anyone, celebrity or not, is supposed to come out of that place with any ounce of sanity left. And of course, this is all happening while Combs' legal team scrambles to keep him away from the chaos. They've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at the court to get him moved somewhere else. The argument is that MDC Brooklyn is simply too dangerous, too chaotic and too notorious. But the prosecutors don't seem to be buying it. In their eyes, if it's good enough for other inmates, it's good enough for Combs. There's definitely an element of, let him suffer like everyone else in the air. And it's not exactly subtle. There's something almost ironic about watching Diddy, once the king of New York, living it up in penthouses and private jets, now facing the grim reality of a federal holding cell. The lavish lifestyle, the entourage, the money, none of it means a thing behind those bars. And perhaps that's exactly what law enforcement wants the public to see. A fall from grace, a message that no one is above the law. But let's be honest, the same system that's now parading Diddy as an example is the one that turned a blind eye to plenty of his past misdeeds when it suited them. The routine self-harm watch label slapped on Combs' situation is another part of this twisted tale. The Bureau of Prisons says it's standard procedure for high-profile inmates, but it feels more like a PR move after the Epstein disaster. No one wants to be the warden who let another high-profile inmate die under their watch. So now Combs gets the round-the-clock check-ins, the extra eyes on him, supposedly for his own safety. It's hard not to think that it's just as much about covering the Bureau's own behind as it is about actually caring for the inmates' well-being. Then there's the cast of characters that have walked the halls of MDC Brooklyn before Combs. R. Kelly, who spent time there facing his own monstrous charges, reportedly found the conditions unbearable. And then Ghislaine Maxwell, who, like Epstein, was at the center of one of the most infamous intimate trafficking rings the world has ever seen. MDC Brooklyn seems to have become the default holding spot for anyone famous enough to make headlines, but dangerous enough to need heavy supervision. It's almost as if the place has taken on a bizarre, dark celebrity status of its own. Imagine a jail cell that's less facility for reform and more real-life horror show. And in the spotlight, Sean Diddy Combs, along with a parade of other notorious inmates, bringing a neon sign to this cesspool. Not that they'd ever admit it. MDC Brooklyn, despite its many illustrious guests, is more infamous for its miserable conditions than the celebrities it houses. You think high-profile inmates are having a tough time? Well, welcome to the Met. The celebs might at least have a microphone to scream through, the rest just gets swallowed by the system. And with Diddy's current stay, the spotlight's on again. So let's dig into what's been uncovered there, from rat-infested nightmares to legal teams describing their clients as broken, which honestly is putting it nicely. Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's right hand in some pretty revolting activities. Maxwell's time in MDC gave everyone an up-close look at just how awful this place could be. Her defense team even called MDC inhumane. And let's face it, if the accommodations were bad enough for someone like Maxwell to complain, that's saying something. Complaints included poor lighting, hardly any exercise, and a general lack of basic human rights. Meanwhile, thousands of others have faced similar hell just without the whole world watching. Once the crypto golden boy, Sam Bankman-Fried, was held here after his crypto empire went belly up in 2023. He got a front row seat to the grime, lack of meds, and, of course, the lack of privacy. And while his lawyers shouted about conditions, it was almost like trying to yell over a hurricane. MDC isn't just a detention center, it's a leveler, pulling everyone down to the same miserable status quo. R&B superstar turned convicted criminal R. Kelly also took a ride through the gates of MDC. His lawyers didn't waste a second before calling out the place for its lack of health care and absolute disregard for mental health. Sure, Kelly's story got splashed on every front page, but here's the truth. Those inadequate health care claims are a tune sung by countless others trapped behind MDC's bars, just without the fame and press. Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, spent time at MDC, mostly trying to dodge rat infestations and hoping COVID wouldn't claim his life before the lack of hygiene did. Cohen's testimony might have shocked the public, but the horrors of MDC were hardly news to those who've been stuck here longer. Cohen's insider accounts confirmed what everyone already knew. MDC is as close to a legal dystopia as it gets. The Smallville actress turned NXIVM cult lieutenant Allison Mack, described her stay as one where isolation and subpar nutrition nearly did her in. Sure, her descent from TV star to MDC inmate was prime headline fodder, but her suffering reflected the same cycle that goes on daily at MDC. Mental deterioration and a slow, quiet collapse that no one really cares to witness. Martin Shkreli, the infamous villain of overpriced substances. This guy thought maybe money and status could make it easier. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Shkreli faced what thousands of inmates at MDC face. Deplorable conditions, healthcare that's practically non-existent, and more suffering than he likely ever imagined from his cushy Wall Street office. Tekashi 69 thought his time in MDC would be an interesting addition to his gang-themed rap career. Not so much. Hernandez found out MDC isn't just a place with bars, it's a cage without safety. His lawyers fought for release to home confinement, citing violence and lack of protection, something that's an everyday terror for most inmates without a legal team and cash to back them up. The former president of Honduras, now on trial for substance trafficking. What a fall from grace, right? He joined the roster at MDC, where his legal team complained about non-existent medical care and sky-high violence, as if anyone expected otherwise. Let's be real, MDC's system doesn't differentiate between ex-leaders or gangsters. Everyone's just another number. Here's the deal. For every celebrity making waves, there's thousands of others whose names you'll never know. MDC isn't designed for reform. It's designed to break people down. Violence is constant, medical attention is a joke, and the staff overworked, underpaid, and not exactly motivated to help. There was that infamous winter power outage in 2019, leaving inmates freezing in the dark for days. High-profile cases draw eyes, but behind those temporary flashes of media interest, there's just pure, cold neglect. The MDC saga isn't just a story about celebrities in jail. It's a crystal-clear mirror showing us the systemic failures that run through federal prisons. We've had federal judges literally call this place barbaric, and they're right. You've got celebrities coming out, lawyers shouting, cameras rolling. But that doesn't change the daily nightmare for those who don't have that kind of pull. For the everyday inmate, life at MDC means figuring out how to navigate through violence, how to stay healthy when healthcare is a myth, and how to hold on to hope when every system you rely on is built to make you fail. It's hopelessness served daily. Sure, the media gets a whiff of these horrors when a Ghislaine Maxwell or a Diddy rolls in. But once those cameras leave, the story goes right back to being business as usual. A business that involves the slow grind of human spirits into dust. Diddy might be the headline today, but tomorrow it'll be someone else. The real story is the place itself. A facility built to hold people, but somehow manages to destroy them in the process. These high-profile stories might bring some heat, but at the end of the day, the truth is glaring. MDC Brooklyn is a broken cog in an even more broken system. It's not a matter of tough luck for the incarcerated. It's systemic rot. If change ever comes, it's probably not coming from celebrity headlines. It's going to come when people stop being satisfied with just another scandal and start actually addressing the core, a rotten, cruel system that keeps going because too many people look the other way. It's also impossible to ignore how the Bureau of Prisons tends to tighten the screws just when the media spotlight starts to shine on them. It's almost as if they're more concerned with looking like they're doing something than actually fixing the root issues. And the root issues are plenty. Understaffing, corruption, poor oversight, and a culture of neglect. Sending in the FBI, DA, and NYPD might make for great headlines, but it doesn't change the fact that MDC Brooklyn has been broken for a long, long time. For the inmates, an operation like this is more than just a nuisance. Imagine being woken up at dawn by a squad of federal agents, your cell tossed, your belongings searched, all while knowing that whatever they're looking for, it probably isn't there. It's an exercise in power. A reminder that they're the ones calling the shots and the inmates are just pawns in a much larger game. The tension, the fear, the uncertainty, it's all part of the psychological warfare that seems to come with the territory at MDC Brooklyn. Diddy's legal team is probably strategizing their next move right now. Maybe another plea to get him transferred. Maybe a push to bring more public attention to the conditions inside. But the reality is, they're up against a system that has shown time and again that it doesn't bend easily. Especially not for those it wants to make an example of. And with Combs being such a high-profile case, it's likely that the authorities are going to keep playing hardball. After all, nothing says we're tough on crime quite like a celebrity brought to his knees by the justice system. Then there's the question of why exactly this raid happened now. Was it truly just routine, or was it sparked by something more? Perhaps a tip-off, perhaps a rumor, or maybe it was just the Bureau's way of reminding everyone that they can and will make life even more miserable for the inmates whenever they choose. The timing is certainly interesting, right in the middle of a media frenzy over Combs' case, with new accusers stepping forward and the trial date looming. It feels calculated, a move to show the public that no one is getting special treatment. The agents who showed up for this operation weren't just there for show. They came equipped, they came ready, and they spent hours combing through the place. Dogs sniffing around, agents in tactical gear. It was a full-on spectacle. And while the Bureau of Prisons may claim it was all in the name of safety, it's hard to ignore the optics of it all. They wanted to be seen doing something to show the world that MDC Brooklyn isn't the mess that everyone knows it is. But no amount of substance-sniffing dogs can mask the fact that this facility has fundamental problems that go far beyond what a single raid can fix. And what about Combs himself, sitting in that cell watching the agents swarm the place? What must he be thinking, the man who once had it all now reduced to this? There's a strange kind of poetic justice in it, perhaps, but also a harsh reminder of just how quickly fortunes can change. One moment you're on top of the world, and the next, you're just another inmate in a system that chews people up and spits them out. The agents may not have found what they were looking for, but the message was clear. Combs is no longer in control, no longer calling the shots. This saga is far from over. With the trial date set for next year and more accusers coming forward, the spotlight on Combs and on MDC Brooklyn will only get brighter. The Bureau of Prisons will keep trying to put out fires, the legal teams will keep maneuvering, and the media will keep watching. This is just the beginning of a very different kind of journey, one without the glitz and glamour, where every day is a battle just to hold on to a shred of dignity. Well, did he make it through? Or is this just the beginning of the end? If you're hooked, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.